is your girl Vanna, the host of the Hood Talks podcast, where community voice is celebrated, elevated, and uplifted. Join us. Hey, I am super excited to announce that BJC Healthcare is the sponsor of this very episode. BJC Healthcare is one of the largest nonprofit healthcare organizations in the United States and is focused on delivering services to residents primarily in the greater St. Louis, southern Illinois, and southeast Missouri regions. BJC serves the healthcare needs of urban, suburban, and rural communities and includes 15 hospitals and multiple community health locations. BJC is sponsoring our episode because they want to invite all community members to join them in a virtual commemorative service honoring the Rev. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from noon to 1 p.m. on Monday, January 17th. BJC's mission is improving the health and well-being of the people in communities it serves. The Martin Luther King Jr. Day event theme focuses on reimagining the dream, service with purpose. The event program honors Dr. King's life and legacy, reflects on his influences today, and focuses on how BJC team members are fulfilling their mission that aligns with Dr. King's dream. Program highlights includes music performances by BJC employees and community members and the St. Louis Children's Choir, inspirational messages from BJC leaders and team members, a look at how BJC shows up to serve our communities. Learn more and tune in at www.bjc.org/MLK-service, or you can watch right here on the Hood Talks podcast as we will be streaming live this very event. Shout out to BJC for sponsoring the Hood Talks podcast. Hey, what is up, y'all? This is your girl Vanna, and I'm super excited because today we have a dope show. This is actually our first The Hood Talks podcast presents the Hood Hill segment. So I'm super excited to bring on this guest and her join me so we can have this conversation. Please help me welcome Miss Tawyna to the Hood Talks podcast.
Yay!
Hi.
Hello. I appreciate you having me today.
I'm super excited to be here with you and to start this segment off. One thing that I'm grateful that you are going to break it down for us when we're talking about mental health. And I think once we get to break the basics down, building from there would be very impactful to the listeners.
But for sure.
We need to know the basics because some of us don't even know that. And I know I ain't the specialist. This ain't my specialty, baby. So I'm happy to provide the space for the professionals, okay?
No problem. Because I always say to people, look, break it down to me like I'm a third grader. I'm not smarter than a fifth grader. I need third grade. Start real low. So I hope nobody feels offended if they feel like, okay, I got it. That's stupid. I know that. Everybody does not.
Everybody does not. Everybody is not the same. And so we have to make sure that we're providing as much information as we can to reach as many people as we can.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're here to do. And that's how we're going to do it. We're going to start it off with the basics. So I'm giving you all the space and to give us to teach, because I'm here to learn also in this space. To my listeners, y'all, hey, I'll be telling y'all, I'm right here with y'all in the thick of it. So I'm excited just to be able to hear and learn just as much as anybody else. So Yes, come on. How do you want to start us off?
I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in St. Louis.
Ooh,
Um, I went to Hazelwood East.
okay.
You know, before
That's,
somebody asked, "What school did she go to?"
that's that move.
I went to Hazelwood East. So I went to college at Southeast Missouri State University. So
Okay.
I went away not too far, came back and have been working in the St. Louis area for well over 20 years. I started with the state. I was a caseworker and moved up to what they call intensive in-home services, working with families for 20 hours a week when the kids were at risk of being taken out of the home. I've
Mm,
worked in at Cardinal Glennon, uh, Youth in Need. I've done. I did a good bulk of my time at the YWCA, the Women's Resource Center, as a sexual assault therapist. We did groups in the prison, community education, um, as well as the sexual assault response team. So sometimes I would go out to the hospitals when um, rape survivors came in, as well as I've done so much I can't even keep up. And then I got out of the field. Oh, I did a short stint at Provident Counseling,
okay.
and then I went to the managed care side, insurance. I did uh, employee assistance counseling
Mm,
or setting people up. I worked in after hours, so people calling in just to talk, people calling in to get set up with a counselor, a
mm.
variety of different things. And
You've been all around this
I was
space.
gonna say, and then yeah, I'm
You touch
still on that side.
children. You touch
Yeah,
adults. So you sexual abuse survivors. You touch several different.
everybody,
Yeah,
everything. So
yeah. So that means who more well equipped to give us the basics than you,
yeah,
huh?
so when I talk to people, I can relate to where they are
Mm.
because people are all over the place. And then last October, I just celebrated 1 year. I started the T Side podcast.
Yeah, shout out to you for that one.
Yes, I'm still getting my courage up to do that. I'm not good at public speaking, so doing
Yeah,
this is even, a step outside of my comfort zone as the expert.
I feel you.
So, yeah, we just going to talk about the basics because again, I've worked with a lot of different people at a lot of different levels.
Mm.
So, these are some of the things that I find on a regular basis, and I will just start with the types of therapists
The types of
because,
yeah, because
people
that's
would call and say, I want to get set up with a psychiatrist. But as I talk, no, they were like, no, I don't want medication. Well, that's what a psychiatrist does. So I'll
mm,
just, you know, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've had people call in and say, well, I don't want a social worker. They don't know what they're doing. Okay. I mean, they don't know my credentials. So that's fine. I'm going to meet you where you at. But basically, they don't really know the difference. So
mm-hmm.
you have a psychiatrist and a psychologist. A psychiatrist has a medical degree. They went to medical school. And
Okay.
so they can write prescriptions, diagnose and monitor for side effects of medications and interactions with medications. A psychologist has a doctorate degree.
Mm,
So they might be Dr. Jones, but it's more on the psychological educational side. They can
mm.
do some testing when your kids need a psychological evaluation.
Yeah.
They can do that. You find a lot of them in schools, but they do more therapy. They can do therapy as well as testing. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
so
interesting. So I didn't even know that. Okay.
yeah, and a counselor and a social worker. I've always worked in conjunction with both alongside counselors. So a LPC, which is a licensed, I think, professional counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and like myself, a LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, because social workers, to be honest, they run a long gamut. So
Yeah, they
they
do.
do a lot of different things. You
They
can
can.
find social workers a lot of times as the case managers in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
doing discharge and doing intake, different things like that. Whether it's on the, you know, abuse side with little ones or elderly, you're trying to get services set up for adults.
Yep.
They can do that as well. But counseling setting, it's more so a you have to have a master's degree in
Hmm.
counseling or social work, and then like so many hours. Like for myself, I had to have 3,000 additional supervised hours in order to get licensed, and every 2 years I have to do 30 hours of continuing education to keep my license.
Okay, so
So
that's not specifically around mental health, though, is it? Or yes.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
and it's you can pick what you want, because to be honest, a counselor and social workers, they can specialize in different things. Like I did rape crisis, counseling and groups. That's a specialty, you
Okay.
know, because everybody's not comfortable with everything. And that's part of the training you get, is figuring out what are you comfortable with, what are you not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am a sexual assault survivor. I will not, and I have had to before, and I quickly realized I do not, will not, cannot work with perpetrators. But they
Mm.
have therapists that are in the prisons that work with perpetrators.
Mm.
It's
And
something
that's,
for everybody.
yeah, because I feel you on that. I think that could be triggering in a sense if
Exactly.
you were working with them. That definitely could be triggering. But there's someone that specializes in that space, and that's
Yeah,
interesting. But I guess they need therapy too, right?
exactly. Clearly. But basically, you
Clearly.
have people who work with kids. Like I've always loved working with younger people.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, they what's called gerontology. They work with older people.
Hmm.
So
So
like
yeah, it's
hospice nurses
like
are
doctors in a sense who have
exactly
those specialties that they might dive into. You have the basics,
right.
and then they go into those, like lanes. You have the blood doctors, the foot doctors, the dentists. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's in that similar space.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and
that's why people always feel like I'll just talk to my friend. You can,
right, but
but they're not trained to do what we do. They're like, well, anybody can do that. That's because we're good at what we do. We
yeah.
make it look easy.
It
It's not.
makes it look easy.
Right.
Exactly. I cannot even imagine being a counselor and having to take in people's heaviness, um,
Yeah.
and still stay professional at the same time, because you have to. It's a
Yeah.
line you have to make sure that you don't cross.
And I will say, they say it's a saying, it's like every good therapist has a therapist.
That part.
So, because you can go off and talk to your friends and tell them about what so and so said, we are bound by confidentiality.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
can't go home and be like, honey, let me tell you,
And
so
that
and so
part.
did.
That part. So that's why everybody be like, my business out here in the streets, because you telling it to the wrong people. You need to go to
Hello.
somebody that can't tell your business.
Right. You said it. I agree. That's what I'm saying. So,
Like, your business out here because you telling the wrong folks. They ain't got no lie telling them they can't tell your business.
right.
They heard, they ready to go. Look, this is the Hood Talks podcast. We keep it real and raw. But yes,
Okay.
they ready to go tell your folks. And that's why, because you going to them instead of going to a therapist. And then we talk
Right.
about how much it costs, which I understand. There is a lot right now around the cost of mental health and that space of therapists and counselors and things like that. So it's really about like how uplifting those services that are some free services that people can
Quite a
tap into.
few. Quite a
Yeah,
few.
but then it's also about making sure that we're making sure that we're prioritizing this too, and how important it really is.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's some nuggets and stuff to drop out there as we continue this conversation. But yeah,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, like let's make sure that we are also making sure that this is priority, and we're putting whatever we need to put into that bucket when it comes to funds and money, or tapping
Yeah.
into the free resources, because they're out there.
Oh, yeah. Quite a few.
Yes, I know some people offer sliding scales and things like that. There are
Hmm.
some nonprofit organizations that are specifically around those spaces.
Yeah. And like I said, I did EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program. So honestly, most jobs have that now where you can get a certain number of sessions at no additional cost. It's
Right.
not through your insurance, it's not through the health plan. Your employer does not know that you're going to therapy.
Oh
They
yes.
they get stats on the demographics, like it how many men, how many women, the age range
Mhm.
of people who are utilizing the services to make sure they're providing the best services.
Mhm.
But they don't know who's going to counseling and what they're going for. So
Right.
basically, it's one. I've seen up to 20. Very few companies offer free sessions. Usually, it's 1 to 3, 1 to 5, or 8,
Wow.
and it's for all household members and dependents.
Mm.
So Papa
Tap
John's
in.
even has employee assistance benefits.
So people really need to really tap in. There's no,
Yeah,
in a sense, it's not really any excuses, but
exactly.
it's no excuses.
Nope.
Y'all hearing this? Like it's there. There's some programs, there's some things, and we're gonna keep diving into it throughout this segment, the Hood Hill segments, because I'm bringing y'all all these dope counselors and therapists and people in this space, so that we can make sure that we are checking our mental health. It has to
Yep.
be a priority in our community. But I'm gonna get off my spiel and I'm gonna let you continue teaching us the game.
That's the thing when you're talking about therapy, and I'm just going to say it. A lot of people, especially in the Black community,
Mhm.
they just hold things in, or
Mhm.
they minimize what they're going through, what the other person is going through.
Mhm.
And basically, it's about your emotional intelligence. And what that is basically just being smarter with your feelings.
Yeah, we need to talk about that, don't we? Emotions,
Yeah.
because
Because,
it's a big part of I think what's
yeah.
happening in our communities is we're not, because we haven't been taught really, in a sense, right? We
And
have
so
not been taught.
you just
So you just
don't.
don't know. You
What
don't,
happens in the house stays in the house.
that part.
But they're always out there, like you said, just running and telling it and talking to the wrong people about the wrong things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and to me, I'm just gonna say it's like a slave mentality.
Mm.
Technically, when you were a slave, you pretty much held in whatever you were feeling. You bet not say nothing.
You
You
better not.
bet not.
You better not say that. You didn't. So we're sticking to that as it's something to be proud
Yeah.
about, of not being able to express ourselves or know how to express ourselves in a healthy way. Because we're sitting
Right.
here like, well, this is how I'm supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to be rough, tough, hard, strong,
Right.
and I can't show no weakness. You couldn't show no
Right.
weakness because your master didn't want you to show weakness.
Right.
Um, because you was showing, you weren't trying to, you were surviving. You didn't want to, our ancestors
Right.
didn't want to die, so they didn't show weakness. They had to be strong. We're now at a space where we are in that space, we need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to be able to express how we're feeling,
Yeah.
especially so it can, benefit our next generation, benefit each other in our community, how we interact with each
Hmm.
other, which is another important thing. I think
Yeah.
we don't know how to, our
Yeah. We
emotions.
don't we don't have, if and the thing is, if you're saying communicate and open up, if you don't have the vocabulary, you're still not able to do it. So we can
Yeah,
just talk about basic emotions. And I do understand there can be a difference in men versus women. So to
yes,
get a Black man on here talking would be wonderful, because honestly, there are Black male therapists,
there
believe
are
it or not, and
there
they have some
are
in St. Louis.
there are some, and shout out if they get a hold of this and they see this segment, come holler at your girl, because I want to
Right.
uplift you all just as much as I am uplifting the others, because I think you're just as important. One thing I do think is that we aren't seeing enough of Black men indulge into their mental health spaces, and I think
Hmm.
that, I know there's a lot that are, but I just think it's not glamorified enough for them to want to, tap into.
Hmm.
But I do think that we should be glorifying that and glamifying the ones that are out there, that the counselors and the ones who are utilizing it, because that they have the right, just like Black women, to tap in and be healthy and healed. So we
Yeah.
need them to be.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But speaking of emotions and the vocabulary around it, people always use the basic ones and they're like, man, that made me mad. I was pissed off. And when I went to therapy to deal with my own issues,
Mm-hmm.
what helped me the most, and to this day, to me, it was like the most profound thing ever.
Like a wake up call.
Yeah. And I still think about it and I use it today. She was
Mm.
like, well, what about it made you angry? I'm like, what do you mean? I just said whatever I said. And she was like, okay, but what about that made you angry? I was like, the fact that such as app, she asked me like 3 times. I was like, because this, and this. She said, so you weren't really angry. You were disappointed. Huh.
Mm.
You know what? Well, I be damned. You right.
So we using the wrong terms for the wrong
Right.
reasons.
Right. Because basically, anger is really just what comes out. That's how it
Mm.
emotes to other people. But it's usually you're frustrated, you're disappointed, you're all these different things. But there's like some basic emotions like sad, you know, happy, different things like that. But it's different emotions underneath that. I did have a emotion wheel, a
Yeah.
feelings wheel.
Let me go ahead and pull that up, and I'm gonna pull that up and let the viewers see that, so they can get an idea of what you're talking about.
And you
There
can
we go.
find this on Google. Just Google feelings wheel or emotional wheel. And there's a lot of different ones that come up. So you like you see fear. That's what it comes out as. But honestly, you could, you know, nervous or, you know, something like that. Instead of saying, excuse me, I'm anxious, I'm scared, it just comes out as fear. That's how you express it. But it's always a lot of different layers, but you have to know those words in order to figure out exactly where you are. So,
And so let's break. Can you break this? Because I'm interested in this too
uh-huh.
myself. And so can you break this down for me? Like you said, bring it to third grade level. So, so is it like the ones in the middle where it says like fear, anger, sadness, surprise, joy, love? Are those all of the ones that are like the surface kind of feelings, I guess? Or
Yeah, those are like the core ones. Like that's what people generally see.
okay, okay. And then
Like if
everything
you're
else,
sad, you know, you just
you probably
feel
sad because you're disappointed or
right.
you feel
You
neglected.
neglect it, right?
Okay, okay.
And
So,
a real life example is I'll use a third grade level. You know, I went to school in the Hazelwood School District. There was Hazelwood Day at Six Flags. And
mm,
let's say, oh, everybody's going to Six Flags, and your parents tell you going to Six Flags or you gonna go to Disney World this summer and you talk about it and that's all you talking about and you hyped about it, but then you don't get to go. For whatever reason, the parents say you can't go.
mm,
Then what happens?
you
You
feel
feel
probably
disappointed,
yeah.
but it's going to come off. You appear to be sad. You're pouting. You're pretty much just sitting in your room like that. Or you'll come out as anger. You start throwing stuff around your room or, being defiant because you're not going to do
Hmm.
what they tell you because you're angry. But that's only how it comes out.
Okay. Hmm.
So,
That's interesting. I think that's again, like you said, people don't know like the dynamics of all these different feelings or emotions. And then they go to the basic ones that,
right.
are usually
Right.
like you said, the love, the anger, the sadness, the fear, the joy. Cause like me looking at this wheel, if I'm nervous about a speaking engagement, um
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna show up as me being fearful, or I'm gonna feel like,
Right.
oh, am I always scared? I'm like, oh, am I always
Right.
scared? But in reality, maybe it's just nervousness. It's not necessarily me being scared. I'm just nervous.
Right.
Um, so just knowing how to, I guess, identify, that's something that I guess maybe we can touch on a little bit too, is like, how do we get people to really broaden their awareness when it comes to the feelings and the emotions, and not just clinging to the ones that are, you
Doing
know.
things like this and going to
Mm,
therapy. That's what a therapist does. So you're not going to go and basically meet with them once and
right.
you're
It's a
cured, you know,
it's a
like
process.
because
Healing is a process. Learning how to be a
yeah,
new you is a process, and that's nothing, y'all. It don't happen overnight. It's kind of like, in a sense too, when you have addicts and who have addictions, and
hmm,
sometimes they have relapse.
yeah,
You can do that in your space of healing, or trying to become a better you. You might
absolutely
have a relapse, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just
right,
means that you whatever you learn, let's try to put that back to full effect and keep going. I think
yeah.
people like fall off the bandwagon and then they're like, oh, that didn't work. No, it did,
You know
but
what? That's
it
a
happened.
myth about therapy.
Mm,
Basically, I went one time, or my friend went, and it didn't work.
that part, yeah,
And to
I hear
that, I
that a lot.
say,
It didn't work for
when you
me.
go to the store, you don't just automatically pick the first pair of shoes, you try them on.
You try them on.
Sometimes they work, sometimes they
Don't
don't.
take
You
them.
keep going until you find that perfect
And
pair
even if
for
they do
you.
work, eventually they might, mess up.
Yeah.
And guess what? You got to go buy some more, right?
Yeah. So again, I like I don't know, maybe it's just how I learn. I give things that I can relate it to. So yeah, you always have to make sure when you're looking for therapy, find the person that's a good fit for you.
Yeah,
Because truth be told, everybody isn't for everybody.
that part.
Because but first, you can't put it on the therapist. You have to know what you want and what your style is. Because some people say, all they did, I need to find somebody else because all they did was talk. Some people say they didn't even say anything. So you have to know what you want. Do you want somebody to give you feedback? Do you want somebody to more so listen to what you're saying?
Mm,
Because people go to therapy for different things.
yeah,
And you
that's
don't have to go to therapy for major crises in your life.
you
Possibly
don't.
you're just at a age, at a space, you want to change careers and you need somebody to really bounce it off of. You can go to therapy for a few sessions and
Mm,
then you're able to process all of that out because a good therapist is not going to tell you what to do.
that part. That's not what they're there for anyway.
From a good therapist is going to help you process your own thoughts and feelings and how to work through it. So if you don't have those emotions and the vocabulary, that's what they're going to do. They're going to help you put words to how you're feeling so you can take that back to your family or to your situation
And
and go from there.
that's important. And I'm gonna get a little personal because shout out to my counselor. When I say something about myself or I feel some type of way about a certain word, the first thing she'll say, "So do you know the meaning of that?" And I'll be like, "No, I don't." And so it's like, let's go look at the meaning, and we'll read it together. She'll be like, "So now, do you feel like that's you, or do you feel like you identify with that?" And I'll be like, "No." She's like, "Okay, so why are we worried about it?" I'll be like, "Oh, so now though I've adapted that to myself. So I'm really,
Right,
when I
right.
feel like or when someone says something to me and it makes me feel some type of way, I'll go read it and I'll go look up that word and be like, oh, that don't resonate with me. They don't know me. Okay, I'm over it.
Right, right. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, oh, okay, because it helps you grow as a person.
You grow, yes, yes.
And
Then you won't have all of this stuff that's like you continue to build up and be angry about, and so
right.
then it lessens down those walls that you build up because every time you feel, maybe targeted or you feel like someone's coming for you, you start trying to protect yourself, and
Yes.
it becomes
Yeah.
a wall up to her, and so you start shedding that down in therapy and the walls become lesser and less and you become more open and you're
Yeah.
able to really be out here and you know not only in the community, but helping your relationships between families, friends, co-workers, whatever it may be, your children, like, and those all are impacted by you and your emotions.
Right. And we'll have to talk about boundaries a different day
Yeah,
because
that's another segment.
that's a whole different
That's a whole
subject.
other segment. But it's
Yeah.
important.
But basically, like you talked about falling off, when you go to therapy or you start to learn about these different emotions and feelings and how to work through them,
Mm-hmm.
you might not always remember, you might not always have the right word, but
Yeah.
at least you start by stopping and thinking about it for a second, like, okay,
Yeah.
why is that, why am I mad about it?
Why? Right.
Why?
What's
And
really causing me to be this mad or this
pretty much you
angry?
might find that each time you go, I've had clients that I would see, they come like probably for but like 3 months, and I won't see them for a year, and then they call back or come back in, basically because they were able to gain some skills that they were able to utilize for whatever was going on, and they would go, something else came up, they needed to come back for a little while.
Mm.
But you keep growing and growing as you go through life.
Yeah.
And so, therapy isn't always something that's long term. You know, that's another myth that, they're going to try to put me on medication. They going to, tell
Yeah.
me what to do.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, not everybody. It's not that and I think that's where again I created this space and this opportunity for the people in mental health spaces to come and talk
Mm-hmm.
because I really do want to stop those stigmas that we have in our community around mental health, and I think that we do need more uplifting of the cultural
Yeah.
spaces that we have out here for our people, because
Yeah.
so sometimes it may be cliche, but some people are thinking that therapy is a white woman sitting behind a board with glasses on writing down how she's gonna put them in the system, take their kids, or in the sense
I'll tell you
like you said, put them on medication.
yeah,
All of it, like
a
that's
funny story. It was a girl who was coming to the rape crisis center.
mm,
She came with her DJO from the juvenile center in
mm-hmm.
her orange jumpsuit. She came directly there. And baby, when I tell you, she did not want to be there.
I'm sure.
She just sat on the couch in the corner, like,
This is not it. I'm not with it. I
and
don't want to be here. I ain't about to talk to you.
and
Like,
here's the thing, because I used to be that person with
mm.
all the attitude. I'm telling you, I love working with the adolescents. I'm like, you know what? I got enough attitude for me and you both. Your tears
I
don't
will
move
meet
me.
your energy.
I'm like, you know what? Well, since you have to be here, you don't have to talk. I'll do the talking. And guess what? You can listen or not, but you will never say, "Well, I ain't know, ain't nobody tell me." I said, "Cause I'm about to tell you."
Mm.
That's my personal philosophy. I'm gonna tell you. You can choose to do with it, you
What you
know.
please, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did ask her, and honestly, more than a few, when I would work with the young people, and they weren't all black. Had one girl who was first generation immigrant. She was speaking, she'd miss school all the time because she had to go to the doctor to interpret for her parents
Wow.
because they didn't speak English. So
Hmm.
it's not, you know, just one culture, but basically they be like, "Oh, you're not what I was expecting. What did you expect?
Yeah.
A old white lady with gray hair." Well, I'm not old at the time. I'm not white and I'm not gray. So, but honestly, how does that change how you feel about coming to therapy? And
And
they
this is really
say,
why.
"Oh, well, sometimes it don't make a difference. Sometimes they're like, well, I feel more comfortable. I feel like you can relate." Okay.
I was just gonna say it's all sometimes about who you feel like can relate to you in a sense.
Yeah.
And
And I will say also, there's not a lot. There's more white therapists than are black, but there are a lot of black therapists out there.
there
We
are,
are in the minority, males even more so, but
yeah,
pretty much it's a female dominated profession. And because I think black people just have more of a stigma, they don't go into it as a profession. I know people who are personally PhD level psychologists. They have doctorate degrees. So
mm,
in St. Louis.
really.
So,
And
you
I'm
know,
sure. I'm sure. I think again, I'm with you on. I think we're out here. You all are out there. I
yeah,
just think it's just not again as uplifted as it
yeah.
could be or
There
should be.
we don't
Talk about
really have
representation.
that platform.
We don't have those. Yeah, we don't have the spaces, the platforms. They're not, showing it on TV when they have our type of shows.
Right.
Even though Tyler Perry, oh Lord, keep helping the black folks in a sense, but I'm waiting on Tyler Perry to put a therapist on one of his shows for them dramas he got. Okay, let's show
Yeah.
that black people do go to therapy. Tyler Perry, okay, I'm
Right.
sure you probably got one too. So
Right.
let's
But
glamify these things a little bit more than we do the dramas.
right.
But
And Oprah is
Tyler
not a
Perry,
therapist.
Oprah is not a therapist.
Dr. Phil, he's a doctor, but
I'm gonna
you
say he
have
ain't
to
really.
approach people differently. But because again, if you're good at what you do, you meet people where they're at.
And then I think that's a lot of that stuff is again in a sense it's show business,
Yeah, it's
it's
dramatized for
entertainment.
TV.
Yeah, it's entertainment, right? It's for TV. And so it doesn't get to the real and rawness of what really is therapy and what it looks like. Because one thing is too, what we highlighted is that it's not always going to be pretty. It may be
You will probably not like your
you
therapist.
probably won't like your therapist, especially if she's pushing you or he's pushing you to a
Yeah.
different place or trying to be to the person you want to be. Again, they're not going to do
Right.
anything that you don't want to be or that you're saying you don't want to do. Why waste their time, right?
Yeah.
Especially if someone is a good therapist and they're like, look, I ain't gonna waste time with you when I could be impacting someone else. And I think a lot of therapists may feel that way, like your coins is nice and all, but at the same time, I could be putting this space and energy into someone else that I can be
Right.
helping that really
Because there's
needs
somebody
help.
on the wait list already. Trust me.
It's a lot of people on the wait list. Yes.
And
I agree.
that's the other thing. People, they pretty much have, although they feel like social workers and therapists aren't always professionals, they act like they're professional. They don't understand me. You don't know what somebody's been through
That part.
and or what they're going through.
Mm.
Pretty much
Never
every
know.
day, at the beginning of the year, my uncle had been in the hospital like all of December with COVID. He died at the beginning of the year.
Oh man, that's
But that
another one.
didn't mean I didn't have to talk to other people who were dealing with their family members in the hospital, or they had their own health issues, or they had their own anxiety because they needed surgery and couldn't get it because hospitals shut everything down because of COVID. Okay.
I was gonna say
They
that's a
ain't
whole
got nothing to
nother
do with it.
COVID in itself is a whole nother like
Yeah.
mental health needed to be uplifted. We needed to make some changes. We needed to really, do some things. And I think it brought to light
Yeah. Oh, for
really around
sure.
mental health and how it's
Mm-hmm.
being provided and how people are now like, okay, maybe I need to do something really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in all those spaces. I mean, COVID done came and show the world that
Yeah.
y'all ain't got it together. Y'all ain't got it right. Y'all need to
Clearly
do
not, because we still dealing with COVID.
because
But
we
that's a whole nother
clearly
issue
still
too.
doing COVID. It was a game changer. But again, it impacted to me, it really impacted the black community and it really showed that, our mental health spaces are limited and we also really need to do more work on that for ourselves in a sense too. Just
Yeah.
acknowledging that I'm not okay. And that's okay. Let me say this. And we're gonna start wrapping it up. It is okay not to be okay. Like, it's okay to be that. It's
Yeah.
okay to be in that space. It's okay to feel like, you're tired, you're exhausted, depression, all of those things. It's okay to go through that. Let's not stick in it. The anger, all of these emotions, let's not stay in them. That's the part. Let's do the
Right.
work to come up out of them and to push forward. And you may again have a setback. You might get back to that space, but again, it's about moving forward and continue to do the work to continue to grow and flourish. We don't have to stay in those spaces because that's where it's hindering us. If we continue to stay, if I'm always mad, no one wants to be around someone that's always angry.
Right.
Bitter. No one wants to be around somebody that's always bitter.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it will show, even if you're not expressing how you feel, the whole body language thing, people, and then you like, nobody even invited me to the party because they don't want that. They can't handle that negative energy.
Yes, that part. That part.
Yeah.
And when you are a person that feels off energy and, in your spirituality, you be like, look, I ain't got it. I ain't got the
Right.
time, the energy myself, the space
Right.
to provide anything to that, and I wish you well. And then people, like
Right.
you never know what people are doing themselves. Because one thing I love to say, I keep it real and raw and I'm real transparent, is I'm doing the work. I'm still in the process of doing work. I've been really consistent with therapy and my counseling these last several years, but it's also, like I've had setbacks. I've had moments where I'm like, okay, did it really work? And I had to remind myself, yes, I had to remind myself about growth. I had to look back and be like, you remember how you used to handle it? Look how you handle it now. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to take
Absolutely.
those moments and sit
See, I'm
back.
proud of you. You are growing.
Girl, you are y'all be. I ain't gonna spill my tea. Not on the first episode, y'all. I ain't gonna spill my tea on the first episode. But yeah, no, I look back and I really had to look at myself and be like you sit here and said at the beginning, sitting here in this space and being able to put myself out here and have these discussions and build this platform. I wouldn't have been able to do that 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
I had a lot of things within myself. I had to really come to self-love. I ain't, again, transparent, self-love and really uplifting, how I care about myself and things like that. So yeah, I'm doing the work and I hope to help others do their work.
And you know what? That's the most important thing. And that's why I love the Hood Talks podcast, because you bring out the hood that people feel like possibly they not getting help. They don't feel like they are doing, they don't need help. They not doing anything. They just want to be in the hood. You can be hood and go to therapy.
Yes, you can. I call it
Because
hood
you can
healing.
find a hood therapist.
Yes, you can. They out here. They out here.
That
They
would
are
be
out
me.
here. That's me. Yeah, I'm out here.
Yeah.
Come tap in, y'all. Come tap in.
Yeah.
Right. It's about having the representation for everyone. And
Yeah.
not even just that you can get a therapist in that space, but you can be one. Tap in, because that's another one that I want to uplift, is that again, let's get into these spaces so we can be providing these spaces for each other. So yeah, not only that you can get one, but you can be one. That's also important.
And that's something that was important because I was in grad school because my undergrad degree was in child development and family studies because of the background I grew up with. But then I went to grad school and I was at the YWCA. And I remember the clinical supervisor said there was a position open and did I want to be a therapist? I was like, I don't know how to be a therapist. That's not what I do. I do home visits. I go in the field. And she said, because I ended up working with one of her clients before I was at the Y, and she remembered me. And she said, you would be a great therapist because you know how to listen. I was like, she said, the rest will come. Okay, if you say so, sure, I'll give it a shot. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was there for 5 years. So
And look
you
at you
just
now.
learned. And she did say, because I was like, I'm gonna let you know I was abused, so I don't know how that's gonna work. She was like, just make sure you go to therapy and process all of that before you start.
Mm,
Because the last thing you want is to deal with or hear somebody talking about something and then you're triggered.
yeah, that's true.
So
That's
that's
true.
why I say every good therapist has a therapist, because you know you have to
Right.
work through your own stuff. So technically, it took me a while to get to where I could listen to other people's issues and
And not
not look. Now, I will say sometimes it can be a negative when I'm talking to my friends because they'll be like, "For real, you just not gonna?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry," because I can blank out, be like, "Oh, I am happy for you," but I won't really emote that because I'm used to just shutting it down and be like,
yeah,
"Oh, that's
yeah.
wonderful, great."
Right. I get
But
it. But
but
and I mean, look at you though. You did it. You've been doing it.
yeah,
You continue to doing it. And again, I think it doesn't matter where you have been or what has happened to you. You
yeah,
still can do whatever you put your mind to do. And
yeah,
help in my space and in my mind. Help us, because that's what you're
yeah,
doing. When we need you, we need therapists, counselors, social workers, all of that, just like you. Um,
yeah.
so I appreciate what you do and how you've
Well,
done
thank
it.
you.
You keeping it real and raw. Again, that's what's up. We need those. We need them. We need us.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I think we covered a lot of the basics in a sense. Is there
yeah.
anything else you think we need to touch on that's important before we close out?
No, just I know it was a lot of information. If people have questions or anything like that, feel free.
I was just gonna
We
say,
can
how can
we
the
can
people
get
tap
all that.
into you? Because if I'm like, oh, I like her, I want services, I want to be able to, tap into her. How can I do that?
That is one thing I know. I don't do therapy, individually at this time, but there are a lot in the St. Louis area, and there's a few sites that people can go to. Pretty much, if you don't go through your employee assistance program or through your local, county agency to look for services, you can go to Therapy for Black Girls. I love Therapy for Black Girls. She has a podcast, Dr. Joy,
Shout out to her.
but pretty much that site has a whole directory of therapists, and I've looked just to see what comes up. Probably 5 that I know personally. I just typed in, because it'll say what area. I just typed in St. Louis, and
Oh,
5 that I knew, but it was 5
okay.
pages of therapists in St. Louis, and they were all women of color because it's Therapy for Black Girls.
Damn, come on.
Therapyforblackgirls.com. There's, what is it called? Let me see. It is therapyforblackmen.org. So they have a site for men. You can look on there for a therapist, and just psychologytoday.com. You can type in the area you want. You can look for specialties like what insurance do they take, um,
Okay.
much what do they specialize in, and even if you call to somewhere to get set up with a therapist, just let them know you're looking for somebody to deal with this, because you want somebody who specializes in whatever it is you have going on, because everybody is not good as a grief therapist. A lot of people don't deal with trauma and PTSD. So, there are some that deal specifically with substance abuse. So you just have to let them know what you're looking for. And I will say, if you call a therapist, you can ask questions to get a feel for them before you go. They're not going to do a full interview, but how long are the sessions going to be? Are they virtual or in person? And just to get an idea of their style, you can ask them maybe what is your style of therapy.
And that is so important to know. I think I think again when people talk about therapy, they feel like they're limited in a sense. It's kind of like with us and providers anyway, in doctors' offices and all that. Like especially with women and pregnancy,
Yeah.
do the world.
Yeah.
This is a whole nother space, but I think we don't shop around enough. We don't feel like we are empowered enough to ask questions. We're not empowered enough to feel like we can get what we want. And I think that is what's causing us to not tap in. And I think that is what we have to shed that mindset and go in. Like you said, ask questions. Make sure you know what you want. Be demanding. Like, hey, I want someone that can do this and that and that. If they can't provide that, that's fine. That's okay.
Right.
That's not the therapist or the person for you. Move on, find someone else, and just keep pushing it till you find who's the fit and who helps or gives you what you need. It's about you, caring for you.
Yep. And advocate for yourself.
Yep. Well, all right, y'all. That's it, y'all. That's it. That's it for now. This is our first segment. That's it for now. We're gonna keep bringing some more therapists. We're gonna keep talking about some more topics because again, I think this is very important when we're talking about providing resources, and that's what the Hood Talks podcast is trying to do. So not only if you guys are interested in, certain topics, please let me know. If you know some dope therapists out there, hey, therapists, counselors, all y'all in that mental health field, come holler at your girl. Come on and let's have these conversations and uplift what the work you're doing and how we can provide tools and resources to our people in our community. But thank you, Miss Tanya, for starting us off. Giving us
thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you.
Hopefully I provided some information that was helpful for somebody today.
Yes, it was for me because look, I'm really working on them emotions and feelings.
Yeah,
I can get mad and I'll be like, I'm mad, but then like you said, I'm really disappointed.
Right,
I'm really hurt. I feel neglected. I ain't just mad. It's those things, those deep things that really again come from also traumatic issues. But that's another topic.
That's a whole different one, right?
That's a whole other topic that we gonna get into, y'all. Okay. So again, y'all, thank you for tuning into the Hood Talks podcast. This has been the Hood Hills segment, our first one. Please make sure y'all keep tuning in to us. And yeah, we out. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page and also follow us on all our social medias. And you can find all of that information at www.thehoodtalks.com.